Warriors, this is the Spartan Underground. And now, your host, James 300 Foster.
Welcome back to the 14th episode of the Spartan Underground. This is the return of the Spartan Underground. This episode features my great friend and mentor, Luka Hocevar. As always, the podcast is brought to you by Show You Roll and Albino and Preto, bringing you the best gis, the best jiu-jitsu apparel in the world. Also brought to you by Impact Custom Mouth Guards. Impact provides the mouth guards for USA Boxing, and they have awesome mouth guards for jiu-jitsu and grappling as well. So definitely check them out over at impactmouthguards.com. And make sure to use the code SPARTAN10. That's Spartan10 to get a 10% discount on checkout. All right, guys, without any further ado, here are myself and Luka Hocevar. All right, it is the return episode of the Spartan Underground, coming to you from the new official podcast studio at Foster Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu in Kent, Washington. I'm honored to have my first guest on the return. It's my longtime great friend, Luka Hocevar. Luka, how you doing today, brother?
I am fabulous, caffeinated, and ready to go.
Yes.
And I feel like this is like a hip-hop studio.
It is.
I got a feeling like you're doing some rhymes here in the back with this setup, which I love. This is great.
That part of my life is over now. Well, I know that you are a busy man, so let's get right to it. I wanted to ask you a little bit about your background coming up before you got into the industry that you're in the fitness and strength and conditioning industry. Is that something that you had aspirations to do when you were younger, or were you focused on a different path and then switched over to that? How'd that all shake down?
Yeah, actually none. There's these like multiple underlying stories. Sometimes I tell a story and I have to connect the dots because there's a lot going on. But I grew up in communism, socialism, 81, and which was still Yugoslavia before the war. And, I would say back then, like playing a sport, and just where I'm from, like sports, physical culture is just a huge part of life. It hasn't seen the demise that it has here in the U.S., which is sad. It's still not the way it used to be, but, point being, like, always playing sports outside. I had two brothers, fought a lot, did all that good stuff. They're both older. But we're really into sports family too. My pops played, never at a crazy high level, but like play basketball. My mom was a swimmer. But we ended up, at 7 years old, we ended up moving to London, and my dad got a job, right? So in this, it's kind of like say kitchen appliances, they're a bigger company from Slovenia. And so, of course, like, what does a person that's living in, socialism do is going to do better for his family? So we all leave. Now, as a kid, I legitimately thought we're going on vacation.
Oh, okay.
So
you didn't realize you were relocating.
No, I wasn't completely there with that whole idea.
Yeah.
But, it's crazy because my pops just, like, 2 weeks from living there, he drops me off at school, like just a regular school. And he's like, all right, man, pick you up at 3:30. And I'm like, what?
Yeah, what are we doing?
And I just know, like, yes, no, my name's Luka. That's it,
Right.
So, but that's how, my parents did a lot of figure it out parenting, which I appreciate today,
Built character, right?
Oh, yeah, built character. And so we lived there for about long story short, we lived there for 4 years. Kind of the economy crashed a lot, so my dad lost that job. But he was like, hey, I'm going to stay up here and do – I got the side hustle. I'm going to try to start a business, but we couldn't afford living there. We couldn't afford being there.
Right.
So we went back, like, kind of right around when the war started in the Balkans, 91. And so interesting times
No doubt.
to say the least.
To say the least, yeah.
And Slovenia was fortunate; we had the least amount of war. That's Croatia and Bosnia. That was a lot worse. But I had one of those. I was a super. Like today, I'd be on ADHD meds all day long.
Yeah, you would have been classified as one of those
Absolutely.
kids, right?
You probably are like want to give me some meds right now, which is understandable.
I've just been spending all these years knowing you, trying to figure out how to bottle your energy and turn it into a supplement. And,
I know.
And your ability to run on very few hours of sleep. If I could capture that.
Which I've improved on, but the Luka juice is still real, though. I want to just call it Luka juice.
Trademark.
Trademark that.
Patent pending.
Oh, yeah. And you know what? I'd be very into that, right? It's like it's part of my character. Like, I got my own energy drink.
Yeah, absolutely.
And but back then, it was like basketball was it for me. Like
basketball was your thing.
Was like, I played a lot of sports. I was one of those kids that, for my, I guess, primary school, which is the earlier – that's like the 1st through 9th grade in Slovenia, right? I did everything, like track and field and soccer, like just, everything I could. But basketball was it for me. And, from that age on, honestly, all the way up until, my aspiration was to be a pro ball player.
Yeah.
That was it. And I also, in starting age about 12 to 13, I started, so – it was me and my brothers, my mom, my dad was living away in London, because he eventually ended up making that business work. And so basically for the next 25, 30 years, he ended up being in England, right? Like kind of import, export, there for 5-6 weeks, home for 5 days. So I didn't really see much of him. And I was like a knucklehead kid. So it was basically, I went to school, but, I kind of went to school.
We're always the most focused on the academic side of things.
I did enough because I could get away with it, but I was I was in the streets a lot. Like, so I played basketball and I got in trouble and did a lot. From ages, especially like 13, 14 to 18. I was involved in a lot of just organized crime, and I look back on these days, and I think it was part of it was my putting attention into something, and school was like,
you needed, you were trying to find some kind of outlet.
Exactly. Outlet. And then I had people too that became my people, like it's your crew, and some of them weren't the best influences.
So you had that camaraderie in that
but
group.
You have the camaraderie and you have the belonging and being part of something. And two, a big part of it, what it was, is I was the youngest kid. I was always, there's a whole bunch of stuff that happened in my childhood where you're seeking significance, like
absolutely trying to kind of stand out.
It's trying to be like, hey, I'm here. You know what I mean? And so that for me took a wrong turn too, because it was, I think crime. One of the things about crime, I think, is that you feel powerful. Even though it's all it's actually insecurity.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's insecurity. But if I hold a gun, then I feel like I'm powerful, but I'm really insecure.
Correct. It's because you're scared and
exactly.
insecure. Yeah.
But you don't understand that, and so like these are the outlets that I would go through.
Yep.
And so a lot of basically I'd practice basketball and train 5 hours a day. Maybe more. Just as much as I possibly could. The rest, I'd come to school a little bit enough to like pass, and and people to see me there, and it used to be less and less. Like from 16 to 18, it's like I'm just showing up for tests, maybe. It's just, there'll be a joke that I was at other people's schools more than my own. So my friends were like, dude, like you're at this school more than your own school. It was crazy, and it was true. But that was actually what ended up leading to me leaving, to go to the U.S., part of it. Because I was a good basketball player, and I was already playing like pro when I was 17. And
okay.
Like I would say second division pro and
right.
But I always if you ask me then, what do you want to do? Play an NBA, of course.
Yeah.
That's the only thing I want, right? And
that's the pinnacle.
Oh, that's the And for I was around enough players too that did make it, and played around a lot of really good talent. Today, like for instance, like every player that's ever played in the NBA from Slovenia, I've played against, except for Luka Doncic, who I played with his dad.
Wow.
Goran Dragic plays for the Miami Heat, friend of mine, Ben Udrih, Rosh on the Stairs, like all those guys. Like that's
amazing.
A short generation that we were all in.
All from that group, yeah.
Yeah, so it was, it was a great, I guess it was a great time. I was around a lot of greatness, on that end, and that pushed me for sure. And
so when you came to the U.S., was that to continue pursuing basketball, or was that kind of a little where the fork in the road happened and there was a little shift?
Yeah, well, that was the thing that when I was 17, our Slovenian team, our coach took us to Eastern Invitational Basketball Academy. It was like the number one kind of high school, what would you call it, invitational,
right.
that
kind of where the scouts are.
The scouts are for colleges and stuff. And now with no intention of me going to college, by the way. This was like, hey, we're going to go there, play, get this experience, play against the U.S. high school teams. And I went for like 10 days. So this is in New Jersey. And I have, I had a great experience, played great. I was like, oh, this is awesome. And there was a guy there, his name was Wayne Jones, and he was like, hey, man, have you ever, think about going to college, in the U.S.? I was like, not really. I play pro. Like, this is, I'm going to go to NBA. And he's like, oh, okay. And so I never thought, but he kept in touch with me. He was a really cool dude.
It's kind of like a mentor figure in a sense.
For sure.
In that regard.
Yes, because
kind of being like, hey, kid, maybe you should have something to fall back on.
Exactly. But more so in, I think that, because he was the guy that ran one of the, because you get on a team, and he was basically the team, not captain, but coach.
Yeah.
And, we talk, and obviously I share some stuff, and he's like, well, have you ever thought about this, And I was like, not really, I'm already playing pro. I'm just trying to get to the next team, this, that, the other. And so it kind of, it didn't fall off, but we kept in touch. Like, he had my email back then. It was not a lot of phone or social media. It was just more email. And so that year from 17 to 18 plus, I was that age was what I just, a lot of stuff started happening, from getting in trouble with the police and other, let's just say other figures in order. I mean, just like the stuff that I'm not exaggerating, see in movies,
right.
and even like, one of my friends, I would say, people that influenced me in the necessarily not the best direction, like would start bringing his lawyers. He's like, hey, like, and it was funny to him, but it was, it was the transcripts of us talking on the phone because we were bugged, what I mean?
Man.
Like, so all our conversations and like, we had all these codes. So it's not like we got caught, but it just started piling up, you know? And my basketball coach, who was a huge influence for me, not Wayne, but the coach from Slovenia, he was like, man, I know what you're doing. Like, he's like, number one, if you're late to practices, you won't play, and he knew he could kill me with that because I hated that. Right. So I'd be late. He's like, next game, just sit me, and I'm like, what the fuck, like, I'm the best player, and he didn't care, it's just like, so, and then he sat me down. He's like, man, look, like, what do you think is going to happen? Like, what direction do you think are you going to go here?
Yeah.
And it made me really think, and too, like, there's just a couple of things that popped up, and like, people would come looking for me with guns in front of the gym. Like, it just started getting kind of wild, like, and I got plenty of stories, and it all accumulated kind of into that year. And I was like, man, like this is going nowhere good, and I started laying off certain things, but what happens in that kind of that organized crime game is that it doesn't leave, you can't just be like, well, listen, guys,
right.
I'm done with it all. Like, I'm only doing a little dirt here. Don't worry about me. It doesn't, like, it's just all of it,
just follows you.
It all follows you, and it all rubs off. And that whole year, Wayne kept in touch with me, and he's like, man, like, why don't you come up to, he lived in Denver. I think he still does. And he was like, come to Denver, we'll train for 2 weeks, then we'll drive to Jersey, and we'll do 2 back-to-back Eastern Invitationals, right? Because there was like, I think there was 3 weeks, but like to do 2 out of 3. And there was, I remember writing this email, because I was at home, and it was just like the previous month was just like you could snatch it out of a movie. I'm like, okay, like if I don't do something and change something, like what's going to happen?
Yeah, where are you going to end up?
And you kind of, the thing is too, when you fall into that life, you start, it's such a crazy thing to even think back about the things I was willing to do and doing, that I'm like, man, that was so crazy. But you can, your environment just shapes your behavior so much, that you hang around, people that are willing to do whatever, you start kind of morphing into that, and good and bad, right? Good and bad. And there's another side of this, which is obviously the good side of this where I am today. But I remember emailing Wayne and I said, you know what? Okay, like I'll do that. And I flew out and I trained with him. We did the Red Rocks because it's an elevation too, so we're doing all this conditioning stuff. And now here's the thing: I don't know anything about college recruitment at all. Right?
Okay.
I'm like, all right, let's get a college.
Yeah, let's do it.
And but I do really well. Like I do really well on East Invitational. And there's a bunch of schools like Western Michigan, Delaware State, Quinnipiac. They were like, man, we really like your game. Like we'd want to bring you on. And I'm like, okay, cool, awesome, let's do this. And they're like, yeah, okay, well, year one, you're gonna walk on. Like it's July. There is no scholarships for next year.
It's a
like
process here.
You run. I mean, nobody has scholarships after May.
Right.
June. So I'm like, okay, how much is it to walk on? And it's like all these schools like 42, 45 grand. Like I remember talking to my dad. I was like, I'm not even gonna bring this up. And then I just brought it up in like mid sentence. He's just like, yeah,
no.
I figured it out. And so in that camp there was a, I can't even remember the coach's name, but he was one of the coaches on one of the teams in the 2 weeks. And he said, hey, look, man, like there's a JUCO upstate New York. I used to play there, and then I used to coach there. And then he went down to Southern Florida to be one of the top D1 JUCOs. He said, but you'll play, and they can't do a full ride, but you can get some obviously support, I think, is for tuition and whatever, right? And at that point in time, I'm like, I'm bought into this idea. I get back August 3rd, and I'm like, all right, like let's do this. I go to the embassy, I start doing my paperwork, and even like my family and friends were like a little thrown off by like how, the decision was pretty quick, pretty swift. Well, I get the paperwork. Anyways, my first day of school that I was supposed to be there, because I kind of started late, was September 11th. So I was on a flight 20 minutes after the towers got hit.
Holy cow.
On the way to New York. So we flew in the air until we ran out of fuel, landed in Nova Scotia, spent a week in a military camp, took a 2-day bus drive to the city and then up to upstate. And that was the beginning of kind of like my adventure in the U.S. And then I did 2 years of junior college in upstate New York. I did 2 years in Southern Virginia at Full Ride University. And then from there, from there I went and played pro basketball. And so this whole underlying, the reason why I say is like there's a bunch of stories here because I think it's important to share is like I started, training hard when I was 9, right? But I started lifting weights when I was 14 when my mom opened. So she worked at the bank half the day, and then she opened up a gym with a friend. It was like a little small 1,500 square foot gym, like membership. You'd come in and do your thing, right? And so, and I was a scrawny, like, man, I mean, like I'm 6 foot in my sneakers, kind of.
Right.
Not the tallest basketball. When I was 14, I was, really short,
right.
shorter, scrawny, like not built. Wouldn't get picked. Like, I was on that downside of, kind of the genetic pool of basketball.
Yeah.
And so I started lifting, and it was like these. I was really fortunate because it was one of the top powerlifters in Slovenia, trained at that gym, and at the bottom of the building there was one of the guys. There's a little gym, and it was a gymnastics gym, and like the guys that trained there, I can't remember the second guy's name. One was Elias Pigan, like we're talking about 5-time world champion in the straddle. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, and they'd come up and train, like they'd show me all this stuff. So I didn't even know how good I had it back then, right? But I got stronger. Like I built muscle. I could jump higher. I started muscling people on the court, and I was like, yo, this works,
Yeah.
And so that was the first, and it helped me build confidence, strength. I looked better. I could do stuff. People were like, man, like Luka couldn't touch the rim. Like this dude's hanging on the rim. What's going on?
Right.
So it like that was my first kind of sell into strength training and performance training. And then I was like, if just this helped me do this, what if I learn all these things, right? So I started studying training for personal gains, and when I was 16, 17, my basketball coach was friends with a guy. His name was Srđan Đorđević. Like, if you can say it, I'll give you $100. But he was a top track and field coach. Actually, he trained Marilyn Adi for her last, I think, 6-7 years of her career. And Brigitte Bukov is silver medalist, 92 Olympics in Barcelona in 110 meter hurdles, right? So he was like legend.
Yeah.
And basically he was, I was like, man, can I train with him? And so Boris went to him and was like, hey, I got this kid. He's a nutcase, like he wants to train. And so he was like, yeah, if he comes here in the morning, before school,
right.
thinking I wouldn't come. But I came.
You did.
I came. I came 2-3 days a week. So I'm training with Olympians, speed stuff, weighted sleds, how much, EKG, muscle activation stuff. And like I'm asking, I'm the kid that's like, hey, why are we doing this? Why this?
Right.
Why are we loading this much? Why foot fire? Why this long? So and all these people were like super cool. Like I remember training with Brigitte, who was one of the world's best, hurdlers for half a decade at least there. And she'd be teaching me how to do foot fire and this and why. And I was so infatuated with the performance side because I was like, how can I become the most powerful, jump the highest, be the most conditioned?
It's kind of an ends to a means for
absolutely
being better for your sport.
Yes, absolutely. Initially. That's what it was. It was all about the basketball. But underlyingly, I really enjoyed that, and I would read articles for days. And I'd order books and you name it. So by the time I went to college, I went there for basketball. So it's like, well, what do you want to do? I figure you got to know business. All right, I'll do business management. But then I ended up doing all these electives that were, where a professor was like, why don't you just do a minor in exercise science kinesiology? You already got all, and I did because I was so intrigued in the stuff, right?
Right.
And I was always lifting. All my teammates were like, dude, what are you doing? And I'd be showing them, like, I'd already be like, nah, man, do this. You guys, what you're doing is dumb, right? Like, and I'd break it down, like, no, because, like, this is how much, 30%, you produce way more force, and this is power, and this is strength.
You were gleaning a lot of the details about the training from being immersed in the training with those individuals and high-level athletes, but you were actually absorbing and retaining the information.
Yeah, because I attached the knowledge of the things that I was learning to my progress, right? Yep. I was like, if I know these things, I can, kind of craft my own destiny, I guess, in a performance field. And in Slovenia, when you're younger, you go to school, like they make you read Dostoevsky and, Waiting for Godot and, and you got to write essays on it. And like as a kid, especially one that was just all over the place, I was like, I don't read this stuff, like, right? But then when I figured out, like, hold up, I can read whatever I want, and I can read strength manuals and stuff from Zatsiorsky and Hershansky and Charlie Francis and the stuff that they tell me, when I do it, it works.
Right.
That was my first kind of, I think, where I fell in love with education, because it was like, if I learn this from the best and then I do it, I get the result, and because I was seeking that, like, hey, look, I'm great, I'm good, significant stuff, I bought in so much to it because I started figuring out, like, man, I have an unfair advantage if I learn these things. So, it turned into, so underlyingly it was always there from that age, it just never was, it was hiding behind, like, the basketball, right? So once we, I would say, I played 3 years of pro ball. I went to Ukraine, played it for a number of teams in Slovenia. And while I was still playing, like, I never kind of lost touch with the learning of the performance stuff, because I was always like, I can learn it better than, like, the strength coaches that we had could help. Even I know I'd listen to them, but I'd be reading so much. I went through 3,000-4,000 articles on Elite FTS and T Nation just in the span of, like, a couple of years.
That's
maybe.
Crazy.
All the books. I was still playing pro. I was going to seminars. That's how I met Eric Cressy. And Eric is one of the world's, I said not one of he's the world's foremost, I would say, strength and performance specialist for baseball. But just in general, like a fitness industry leader. And I met him, 14, 15 years ago, at a seminar in Birmingham, England. So I flew out, went to the seminar to learn, bought all his products, all the DVDs and everything that he had back then. He didn't have money because he didn't change into pounds. So I took him into lunch, and that's how, like, we met, that long ago. And I was just, like, trying to, like, take everything in, right? Like, how can I be the best? How can I be better? And my second year playing pro, I kind of started, we had a guy that taught us how to do kettlebells back then, and like no one was doing kettlebells back then, right? And so we trained with him, and I really fell in love with kettlebells. And my brother was coaching some people, and he said, "Hey, look, I don't have any more time like to coach these guys. You want to coach them, make a little bit of money, you know?" And pro sports is like this. This is the side, and this will make sense. I'll connect the two stories. People think you play pro sports like you're just balling and making tons of money.
Yeah.
And I mean, I went 2 years where 1 year we barely got paid, and on paper the contract was good, but team runs out of money. Economy's not doing good, so the sponsors don't give the money that they said they would. And you're doing 2-a-days for 2 hours and lifting weights, and you're not making $1. So I'm like, shit, okay, extra money. This like hasn't paid me for 4 months. And I started training them, and it was like I really enjoyed it. Number one, it was like I really enjoyed it. Number two, they go to my brother and they say, "Man, like you're good at this stuff, but man, it's your brother. Like there's I don't know what, but like there's something about him. Like he's like he talks shit to you, but he does it in a loving way and makes you do stuff that like and he's really good at it. Like he understands this stuff." So my brother, came and was like, I guess you got a thing for this, and. So I was doing that, and then I trained at this gym called Sokol, and I just wrote an article for their, and it was a pretty widespread magazine, because it's like, imagine, it's the equivalent in Slovenia, much smaller obviously, but like LA Fitness here, right? Like it was a franchise, kind of like small box but big box there, I guess.
Right.
And so they published it, and it was like this article on like 59 things that cause back pain that you don't know about. And nobody wrote an article like that before that. But I was studying so much stuff that I was like, oh, let me write this, right?
Yeah.
And it blew up, and like now people started coming into the gym like, oh man, you're the guy, like the back pain, like you can help me with back pain. And so people started asking me to train them, and I was like taking some people on because like I needed some money too, And the thing is that, like, I started enjoying it. So my day started being like this. Get up in the morning, practice ball, lift weights, run my brother's translating agency sometimes to make a little bit extra cash, train like 3-4 hours, go back, play ball. It was nuts. And then we started this group in a park called Tivoli, which is like outdoors, like hills, woods. They had like these obstacle courses in Slovenia. It's pretty cool. And we drive out there with our car, pull out kettlebells, ropes, kegs, and we train this group. And it started as a group of 3, and then we got to 5, and then to 8, and then to 12, and 15. And then so, imagine like at that time it was mostly guys. But, you're in the woods, and like this is where families come and people are walking by and walking the trails. And you see a group of like 12, 14, 15 guys swinging metal balls, you know what I mean? Like, and going nuts and shit. And what would happen is that people would just stop and watch us, like, what is that? And we just go, hey, well, you come next Friday and try it out,
exactly.
And some people will be like, no thanks. And some people are like, okay, and they do it. And that's where I just got this gut feeling. Like there was, I'm still like fully into like ball, but I'm like, man, there's something here. Like how is this? This isn't growing just because, you know what I mean? Like there's people reaching out to me to train them here. I was writing the programs for our basketball team because my coach was like, who does your programming? Because I'm on like 206 pounds and I'm dunking on people,
Right.
And I'm like, oh, I write my own program. It's kind of like my hobby. I love doing that stuff, And he's like, what? Like, would you write it for us? I was like, give me an extra $250 a month. I'll do it, you know? And they did. And like, man, they did the programs and the guys are coming to me going like, yo, like I feel better. My knee doesn't hurt. Like, and so I was getting like this positive feed, it's almost like, hey, I'm doing good stuff, helping people.
Yeah, I was gonna say you had a passion for it, but real love for it kind of was in seeing how it was helping others.
Absolutely, and it was, and to kind of riff on this point, subconsciously, I, all the way, even to like, and I say this out loudly, but I want to be like very upfront about like, when you're in a life of crime, there's always a part of you that could like almost pull you back. Okay. So for a while. Right. And like, even in my senior year of college, hopefully my professors aren't listening and try to like press charges or something. But, but I was still like doing stuff, like running an operation in my 4th year of school because my mind would always go to this entrepreneurial thing. And what I knew how to do then was like, sell dope. And it was, but the problem was like, you don't feel good about that. You don't do. Deep down inside, you don't feel good about doing those things. You don't, and so you have this kind of, I don't know, existential crisis, So when I started playing ball and I started training people, like I consciously was like, man, I want to like tip the scales. I've done so much, shitty stuff and dirt in my life, especially in my teenage years, up into my early 20s. Like how do I tip, whether you want to call it karma or whatever else, right? Like how do I tip the scales so that in my life, the scale tips really, really hard towards, man, that guy was a person that gave back and paid forward and made, people better and helped them out, versus like, he took and he just looked out for himself, and which was, a good amount of, I would say, my especially like 15 and 21. But for a decade, I was in some way involved in doing dumb stuff, right? Like, and so the feeling I got from training people and helping people and like people going like, yo, man, like I feel so much better. I lost weight. Like I'm faster. Like the reward was nothing external. There wasn't a money reward. It wasn't a reward of I can buy, gold chains and Motorola voice activated phones before anybody had them, like it was like, man, the feeling of like helping this person out, like is making me feel great, and I was like, man, like there's something here, and that year I went to my brother and I said, dude, like, we have to open a gym, and it was like, what? Huh? And dude, I'm telling you, we got to open a gym. And so I was back then like married, I was seeing and then engaged to my college sweetheart. So like we had a long distance relationship, which obviously sucked. And so at that point in time, it was like, okay, somebody's going to have to move. Like there's no way we're going to do this. And it just was more logical and easier for me to go to the U.S., spoke the language, knew the coach, like all of that, than her going to Slovenia and leave her dance job, So I kind of knew I was going, it was coming. My brother knew it because we'd have conversations. He's like, man, like you're going to go soon. I don't know when, but soon. And I was like, man, I know, but like, this is something we can't pass up on, and it took me like months to convince him to, invest in like 3,000-4,000 euros into kettlebells and some other stuff. And another thing, and my friend Giga, who now runs that gym, like basically my brother and two of my best friends run the gym in Slovenia, and, to convince them to do this, you know what I mean? And I actually, what's crazy, I hired a consultant. He was the kind of like the gym guru in business in Slovenia. And for me, I paid him a lot of, like, for that consultation, I paid him a lot of money.
Right.
And I was like, here's my idea, I'm been fired up since I came out the womb. So I'm like, dude, I got this idea, and like we're training people in the woods and like the kettlebells, and it's gonna be bodyweight training and kettlebells and like more functional stuff. And he's like, man, like your enthusiasm is crazy, but it's not gonna work. There's a reason there's no gyms like this. That's why it's all big box. There's no market for it in Slovenia. And like, for an hour and a half, like I ramp on how it's going to be the greatest thing, and he ramps on how it's not, And at the end, I'm like, well, I was literally like, well, that was a fucking waste of money. I'm still going to go do this, And he's like, okay, and I finally convinced him, and we started in a 470 square foot room. And by the time I left, we went from that, because it wasn't packed all day, but the times that we made available started getting just busy. That's a small room and it fills up fast. And so then it was like, man, like this is real, this is real. And we went to 2,200 square feet. Then I left to go to the US. And so I basically, came here, nobody knew me. I started from scratch, worked at LA Fitness. But like I said, that gym started about 14 years ago. And it is the, we started that, quote unquote functional training gym, as much as I hate to say the word, but like there was nothing like it, before. And like we are the number one, like we set the trends, and
for people who aren't aware, like fast forwarding to present time, you own the Vigor Life building in Renton, Washington. And this was a goal you had expressed to me, gosh, probably close to when we first met or shortly after. I mean, we had talked about it several times. You had like a 3 or 4 year goal of, I'm going to buy a building, and you had the vision for what a great thing it could be for that area, and the services you wanted to provide to the community and helping people. And now today it's a reality.
Real.
And it's interesting, the parallels between our stories. for me, minus the life of crime part, but just how it ends up to where you end up on the path that you're on, really without planning it to be that way. For me, getting into teaching jiu-jitsu was never my plan.
It was a side thing, right?
It just happened, and very similar to what you were saying, like people start showing up and asking, hey, how much does it cost? And it snowballs, and you end up on the path that you're intended to be on, I guess, even though it was something that you maybe didn't anticipate ahead of time.
And I think this is, I'm sure you get this question quite a bit. I think I have a better answer for it today than I have for a long time. Like people go like, how do you find your purpose? And or how do you find a meaningful work and things like that, right? Well, first of all, you don't find it by sitting on the couch and thinking about it, right? Like it's something you can't think your way out of. But one of my mentors, John Berardi, who's phenomenal, like owner of Precision Nutrition, he has this thing where you find your purpose, and there's specific questions on how you can do that, right? And then you figure out your values and then your unique abilities. Now, that won't give you the answer, but it'll narrow your path.
Yeah, it'll start kind of guiding you towards
correct
what potentially fits for you.
Because, for instance, like I enjoyed the training, so it's like when I look back and it's like, and I liked helping people, right? But helping people is too wide. You could help people being a nurse. You could help people being a waiter. You could help, right? There's a lot of ways to do it.
Correct.
And for me, like fitness influenced my life in a very, very meaningful way. Like gave me confidence when I was like super shy and insecure and like felt like
now you're speaking in front of rooms in front of thousands of people.
Yeah, and
on the regular.
And it started, like it starts as a little thing, right?
Yep.
Like and so anything, and two, like the people that I would still consider saving my life are my basketball coaches. Like they were coaches. That's just what important to say, right? They were coaches. So I regularly say, and I 100% believe, like if I didn't, I don't know what would happen, but the way things were going, if I didn't have more love for ball and fitness, I would have gone, full blown. It just wouldn't have been
the other way.
It would have not have been a good thing. So,
yeah.
To me, like obviously that's a kind of origin story where me doing that for others is like such a meaningful thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
And you just have to be aware. Actually, there's this great drill of like, texting people you care about and trust and respect,
Mm-hmm.
and it's like 5-6 questions. And it's like, hey, what do you look to me for?
Right.
What do you think that I'm awesome at? What do you think is my unique ability? How do I best help you? And you send that to like 6 to 10 people. What's going to happen is that not just random people, like people that you're like, I'd send it to you, for instance, right? I'd send it to you. You might send it to me, some other, mentors, friends, that you'd start getting stuff back and you'd see a kind of like a line run through certain themes, right? That everybody's saying some similar stuff.
Right.
Well, that's probably your superpower, your unique ability, right? You might want to go in that direction. That's telling you something, right?
Yeah.
So for me, like I can tell you right off the bat, like I am not I'm organized for myself, but I'm not organized. I know you're the same way too. Like as I walked into the office, I'm like, oh my God, this is so nice. And you're like, yep, that's not me.
Yeah, exactly.
And
that's Miss Amy.
Hell yeah.
My lovely wife.
I was like, Amy, you are hired.
Best decision we ever made, bringing her on board here full time.
Oh, hell yeah.
Yeah.
Everything is so much smoother.
It's so much smoother.
I feel like your stress level is going down significantly,
Bro,
too.
I was telling somebody the other day, I used to have, and you probably noticed it, but on my cheeks, I would have this rash, and it's rosacea. Yep. My mom has rosacea, and mine would get really aggravated because of grappling, and obviously having the gi material scrape across your face doesn't make it better. And I always thought it was caused by, like, dietary or too much caffeine, too much pre-workout, whatever. I thought that was exacerbating it. But her and I were talking the other day just about how much better we are mentally and how our stress has gone down. And like literally almost to the day of her starting here back in March to now, I haven't had that rash completely. It was all stress induced.
Isn't that crazy?
Yeah, it has completely gone, cleared up, skin's great.
You know what's crazy is like, and Steve Krebs, obviously,
yeah,
he has the same thing.
Yeah.
And so I'll know, like, basically if I
You'll
see
know
him.
when he's
Yeah,
he's
if I'm
really
seeing him, like, man,
stressed.
you've been stressed out, bro? He's
Yeah.
like, you know,
Exactly.
like, I see it, right?
Yeah, it was crazy, though, to make that connection. I'm like, oh, man, it completely went away.
It's, you know, this brings me to, like, this point of the, you know, we're both people that really believe in, like, hard work is, I mean, not only a value, honestly, I always thought, like, my superpower was I can outwork anybody. You know, I
Right.
still believe that. And now, here's the thing. That's a good thing until it becomes a bad thing,
Exactly.
right? And so these last years, I'm working, you know, doing more of less. Still, like, working really hard at the things that matter the most and that move the dial the most.
Yeah.
You know, because otherwise, what tends to happen is you can start believing too much in this identity that, like, if you don't work, you know, 16-hour days, then, like, you're, I don't know, less of a
Right.
human, or you're not do good enough or whatever. And this is it's kind of like this lesson in balance, right? Like, most people maybe don't train enough, right, to be healthy. So they should do more fitness and watch their nutrition more. And then there's a ever-growing population now in the U.S. specifically that do too much.
Yeah.
Right? Not enough sleep, too much training, constant stress, no recovery methods, right? And it's like you're also now sick and beat up, right?
And some extreme dietary
that's
things based on whatever the latest trend is.
Right?
Yeah.
Like
water fasting.
Jeez.
It's like, good Lord.
It's become, you know, and this is kind of like the problem of, I guess there's tons of positive stuff and tons of negative stuff with social media, and you know, this I would say massive influx of information, right? I always say people are drowning in information, but, you know, thirsty for transformation,
right?
And it's like it's hard to dissect and dilute. And I think it's the same. Like, I think you know, obviously fitness is the field that I'm in, but it's the same in business, right? It's the same, right? Like, there's a bombardment of information. Like, what should you do? And it's so much. Like, people are even more confused than ever. You know?
And you run into that in the jiu-jitsu world too.
Same thing, right?
Yeah, it's the same exact thing. There's so much. You know, back when I started, there was no technique videos. There was no books on jiu-jitsu. You know, I always say now people can go on YouTube and spend literally every longer than that. Like, you can free content, you know, out your ears, and but it's like information overload, and it can be hard too to, you know, I'm sure, like in your industry, sort out the quality information from that, because it's just a mass amount, and it can be exceptionally hard for newer jiu-jitsu students who are wanting to, you know, oh, how can I supplement my training? I want to look at videos, and it's like, well, you got to make sure you're looking at videos from the right sources and not just random, because anybody can throw a video up on YouTube. So, and if you don't, you know, you haven't been training very long, you don't know what's good and bad. So
no, and you don't. Well, now we judge, unfortunately. You know, I mean, some of the greatest strength coaches that I know, you know, don't have a lot of followers, right? Like,
right.
And then there's, you know, Missy with a beautiful tush with like 2.7 million going, like, hey, this is what you should do. Like, you have no idea what the hell you're doing. You know, so yes, absolutely. It's like, you know, do your due diligence. And in context too. Like, if I tell you how I'm training, should you be training that way? No, like, I actually just, you know, I just trained, not naming any names, but like a very, very high level,
very prominent pro athlete
in Major League Baseball. And like, you know, and as I'm training him, like, obviously that population has a specific repetitive patterns, and, you know, I mean, it is the most powerful movement in sports is the baseball pitch. You know what I mean?
Right.
And imagine like you know, you're watching a video and you're watching somebody who's giving good advice for, I don't know, the general population, right? But you can't take that now and go and just apply it to anybody, because everybody's different. And, you know, I know everybody hates the "it depends" answer, but it does. And so it's the same thing. Like, you know, we're really good now, like the gurus, you know. And it's funny. I was just speaking to my buddy Craig Ballantyne's event, you know, and I have this the speak. I mean, I was running the panels for gym owners,
right?
So, and I have this thing, and it's on it. It says, you know, industry guru, and I'm like, oh, there we go, you know, I'm that guy now. But you know, but it's like the guru said, do this, you know, and like, just like my fitness coaching, and I know your jujitsu, and when I do business coaching, I ask more questions, than give answers, because I don't know. Like, let me find out like what's going on here. Where it's like, hey, dude, just do this drill. Yeah, but when I do this drill, this hurts. Like,
yeah, absolutely.
okay,
And then like with jiu-jitsu, there's so many things that are, maybe a position or a technique that's good for one body type but doesn't necessarily work well for somebody with a different body type. So everything has to be adapted and evolved to the style of that person's game and their, stuff that'll enhance their attributes instead of them trying to force themselves to work for the technique. Like finding techniques that work well for them is a art in and of itself.
And so there's a thing. This kind of brings me to actually at Craig's event. There's like what I did is I sit at the table and there's 20 plus gym owners. They're asking, and I'm hey, what do you do? What is your struggle? We'd go around and I just kind of like rip, which is what I love doing. And one of the guys like, hey, I'm still in the military. I got these powerlifting records, but like I got 6 more years. But then I want to open a gym. And I come to this point because it's like, what advice do you have? Like, I mean, I know I'm still far out, but that's why I'm here and I'm learning that. And I was like, dude, the number one thing you should do is find gyms in your area and just intern there.
Right.
Like first of all, like, yes, study the books, get the courses, go to seminars, right? But then go into a real world location that does great work on the training side of things. And they're also like a healthy company, meaning they're not going bankrupt, right? Because what do you want to learn? Well, you want to learn how you actually coach people in real life, and that get results and treat them right in the customer experience. And then you also want to learn like, hey, how are they doing marketing and sales and like, same thing, retention stuff and customer experience, like in the real world, right? Not in a theoretical.
How does it actually work?
How does it actually work?
Yeah.
And it's like, and you do an internship there for 3 months, go another great place. And like, if you do that for the next, every year you did one,
right?
You do 6 internships in the next 6 years. How fucking qualified would you be in that? I mean, you'd be as qualified. You'd be crazy qualified.
Exactly.
Right. So, and at the same time, you're also like learning, from the books.
Yeah, it's like on the job experience in a sense.
But you can actually apply and see how this works, because somebody comes to Vigor and is interning and go like, hey, I read this thing and man, like this is the best way to do it. I'm like, cool. All right. So show me how you do that here. And then they get stuck. I'm like, well, see, because you read this here without the context of you got 40 people in a class. Or what about if you got a group of, 65?
There are variables.
There's tons of variables. And I still can't figure it out why people would not, like, this next year is insane for me. Like I got, I signed next week, but like I verbally agreed to a book deal by a big fitness publisher. I got another self-published book that I'm going to do. And like just one, it's insane, right? Like insane amount of stuff. Now, if I wanted to be great at, I don't know, let's say I wanted to get even better at real estate stuff, right? And the best guy in Seattle on flipping houses, because that's what I wanted to do, right? Was like, Luka, listen, I need some help. 15, 20 hours a week. Help me out. I'll teach you everything. Like, but you're going to work for free, man. You're going to follow me here. Like, I need you to be here. I need you to do this. Yo, listen, like I'm going to find 15 to 20 hours a week on top of my schedule. And guess what the last thing in the world I'm going to say is like, what does it pay?
Yeah.
What does it pay? This guy's the best in his field.
Yeah, he's going to
like,
give you
invaluable
information.
Absolutely. You know what I mean? Like you want to, you want to get great at jiu-jitsu? Go see James Foster. You want to learn how to run a really successful like BJJ, like gym / a dojo? Man, go see James Foster. And in another state, there's other people that are doing it the right way with integrity.
Exactly.
Running a great business, teaching it the great way. Man, study everything that you can from them. Buy their course. Like follow them. They follow that person on IG. Follow their YouTube. Like once you know it's the right person, consume. And then as you're consuming, like apply all day long. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And people will go like, well, listen, you are where you are now, but I still see you reading 2 books a week. And like, I still see you going to 15 courses a year.
It's never ending.
And it's like, well, yeah, like this, because it's not a thing. It's a way of life.
Yep.
Like it's a value for me versus a period. You know, I'm doing this for a period. That's the same thing as going on a 12-week transformation challenge and then going back to what you were doing. It's crazy. Why would you do that?
Absolutely.
You got to keep, it has to become a part of who you are. You know what I mean?
Yeah, you can never stop growing.
No, like
you know?
and that's the thing is, if your value is, we're just doing a team meeting on Sunday, and I'm kind of revamping our values, and one of them is constant expansion / growth, right? Like, but you can ask yourself every day, hey, listen, did I grow today? I don't know. Did I breathe for 30 minutes? Did I ask Luka to show me this new thing that he learned? Did I go through 20 minutes or 2 modules of a course? Yes, I did. Okay, cool. I'm growing. Like, I'm doing, like, it's part of my life, right? If you go for a week and go like, no, I haven't done anything, is growth really your value?
Yeah,
I don't know.
not.
I'm opening the door for everybody, or am I just opening the door for, the hot girl that I want to impress?
Growth isn't. Growth and convenience aren't always aligned with one another.
Rarely.
So it's like, and we live in a very much of a convenience-driven society. So for people to really make the effort and make the time, it's something that, you have to come to realize that's what you need to do to be great in any area that you're trying to be great in. You have to make the time to study, make the time to be mentored, and to take in the information, and to take in information without preconceived notions or putting up walls, not being willing to receive the information.
Yeah.
That's huge.
The empty cup.
Yeah, I mean, there's,
cup.
Unfortunately, just like any industry, there's, instructors or groups who think that they don't need to look at anything outside of their own group. Like, oh, we have great instructors here. We don't need to go to a seminar and learn new things. It's a very limiting approach.
It's a very limiting approach.
I feel you can learn from everybody.
Absolutely.
Like I even learned stuff rolling with my white belts. Because white belts, they don't necessarily know what's right or wrong. So sometimes they'll do something crazy, and it's actually like
the best
cool.
Thing. Yeah,
they came up with something.
You go like, hey, what did you just do that? Did you do that?
Yeah, they didn't have the inhibitions of, oh, that's wrong. I can't do that. Sometimes they do cool stuff without even knowing it. And I take that stuff away and put it in my back pocket for later down the road to develop.
But that's, what you're talking about is also humility, right? Because I think in any case, but especially once I think you have achieved something and people look to you, like I said, getting the industry guru badge, it's very easy to go like, well, now people, like, they think that I'm the guy, so, man, I can't look like I'm dumb.
Yeah.
And that's the ego, right? It's like, whereas I'll go to conferences, I still, front row, all the notes, asking questions, I was just at Brett Contreras' gym, who's very well known for obviously glute training and kind of popularized it and whatnot. Very, very, very smart dude. At his gym, like, man, I show up and like I am literally like I'm 16 years old again. I'm just like, and I may know a lot of it, but the thing is I have to be receptive to the things that are being said.
Yeah, exactly.
Because then I'm learning.
And you may know, 98.9% of it, but it's that little tiny 1% or even less sometimes that can make all the difference in the world.
And if you feel like, here's the thing, if you in a sense act dumb, like, you get the most out of it, right? Because as soon as you have I already know that, like, boom, you're blocked off from learning, right?
Yes.
Like, and so it's funny. Some of my friends are like, dude, you signed up for that guy's course, like, more than him, and I'm like, yeah, but like there was, man, like 15% of the stuff I went through is like really good, and I never thought about that, and we're not doing that. And like, man, that 15% is really valuable,
Yeah.
And I'll publicly say it too. Like, I don't give it, like, I can tell you right now, like, I follow, who all the people that I follow and what I learn from them, and like, I'm proud. I'm like, yo, I just learned this thing from this guy, but I think that's the kind of competitive advantage in a sense, because, like, think about this. We can all learn this is the quote. I think Alan Cosgrove taught me. He said, you can learn anything that anybody's ever learned as long as you're willing to put in the work.
Right.
Think about that. Like, anything, like the best way to do this, this grip and this hold and this submission, and you can learn it. Like, if there's no excuse other than the unwillingness to put in the effort and the work and the I would say the intention and focus in it, right? Like, so when you think about that, there's really no excuse. There's only like interested people and committed people, and my buddy Satema, who also was an NFL champion with the New England Patriots, one of the things that he said that stuck with me was, he said commitment's three things. It's like, it's doing what is required, doing what you said you do, and doing it despite of emotions, feelings, moods, and thoughts, right?
Right.
Because number one, required. So look, if you're like, I want to deadlift, 400 pounds, and like right now you're at 200 pounds, and I'm like, okay, well, listen, that's going to take you maybe a year, you're going to have to train like 3-4 days a week. And then the person shows up 6 months later, it's like, dude, I'm not even at 250.
Yeah.
And I'm like, yeah, but you've been training once a week. You're not doing what's required,
Exactly.
and that's what's happening a lot nowadays. And I see it too, and I won't even like bash on millennials or any of that. Look, there's people that do and there's people that don't, but I get a lot of this stuff where like, yo, Luka, man, I want to do this thing that you're doing, right? And I'm like, okay, cool. Well, I've been doing it for 15 years, and like working crazy hard and just fall in love with the process, But here's the requirements. And it's like, well, but I don't want to do those. But that's what's required, dude.
Yeah.
Like, it's not, to pass this test, you
Yeah.
got to get 80%. I got 40. Well, dude, it's not what's required,
Within jiu-jitsu, there's a lot of it's human nature to compare yourself to other people. So there'll be a lot of instances of, well, I started around the same time as this guy, but he's already got his blue belt or whatever. And it's like, yeah, well, within your reality, he's only here when you're here, but he's here
another 4 days that you're not.
4 or 5 other days that you're not.
Yeah.
You're in once or twice a week, and he's in 7 days a week, but you only see the 2 days a week.
Yep.
When you're both here, and you think you're on the same track, and it's different.
Not,
It's the quickest way to get discouraged is kind of comparing your journey to the journey
Absolutely.
of others.
And then having those type of expectations, right? Because,
Exactly.
I mean, did you hear how like Tony Robbins got started with speaking?
Yeah.
You like basically, he went to these speaking courses and classes, and they were like, hey, to get good at speaking, like, you got to speak, you got, because you're going to get feedback, and then you can make it better, and you kind of keep course correcting, right? And in a year, this guy's like getting paid to speak a bunch, right? And the people that were with him in class, like we did the work too.
Yeah.
And some of the guys that like did pretty damn good would go and speak once a week, once every couple of weeks. Well, Tony Robbins was setting up 6 speakings a week.
Yeah.
So by the end of the year, he's done 250, 300, right?
Exactly.
While the other guy that was actually doing pretty damn good, did 40. But that's like almost, that's 8 times more or 6 times
Yeah.
more, right? So 6 times the frequency, and every time he would be like, hey, what can I do better? I record myself, or like, hey, let me make it a little bit better next time, right? And so now you can't be like, well, I want to be where he is. Well, then you got to put in that work on the frequency, right?
Yeah.
Like,
and it may take you longer.
and it may take you longer because
we're all
nobody is
different.
the same.
Yeah,
Because
we're
it's,
all different.
best analogy is fat loss, which, the world of obviously a lot of what we do at the gym, you get, person A and person B, and like they could be, actually they did these, this is very interesting, that identical twins study, right?
Yeah.
They did an identical twin study and followed them from, I forgot what age, but it was like for decades, right? And even though, they had the exact same DNA, right? One of them was 50 pounds overweight. One of them was like, at normal weight.
Right.
Right. So obviously the environment and the changes like shift, even if you're genetically identical, right?
Yeah.
Because that one, the one twin had their experiences, the kind of like nature, nurture, and things that were around, and the food they were eating, and losing weight, gaining weight, and metabolic adaptations, right? Like it's just like different lifestyle, different so you can't go like, well, that guy, made that much money or did, lost that much weight. Like I want to do the same in the same amount of time. The only thing that you can do is commit to the behaviors, right? Like that's my favorite thing to like, okay, let's map out a goal in your business. Let's map out a goal with your body, and then let's reverse engineer it. But let's not reverse engineer just the benchmarks, which is what people love to do, right?
Right.
In a year, I want to make this much. So next month, I should be here, right?
Yeah.
What I do is we break it down into behaviors. Okay, what are the behaviors that you have to do, and the daily actions that you have, and habits you have to achieve this?
Right.
And the thing is, if you just focus on those, here's the thing: you'll probably get to your goal the fastest, but now you're not judging external things like in, with your body. Like you could get sick or gene stuff, or you have, I don't know, you have gut issues or something, right? So even though you're doing the right things, it's not moving the dial like it is for somebody else.
Yeah, you have those limitations.
Exactly. But if you check off the behavior, hey, I got 8 hours of sleep. Hey, I got my workout in. Hey, I ate, enough protein with every meal. I got half a plate of veggies. Those are behaviors, right? Those, and you tick them off, and you can look at that and go like, man, I'm doing the right things.
Yeah.
Okay, then that's the only thing that you can worry about and focus on, and not worry about the external stuff.
Focus on the process.
On the process. Like that's it. It's the most cliche-ish answer.
It is.
That you can have, but like to me, like that's what I end up doing with everybody, even in the business realm. It's like, hey, look, okay, cool. Did you contact these 3 to 5 people? Are you doing an email, newsletter a week? Are you putting out quality content? Do you have, like you look at the behavior stuff, and from the behavior stuff, okay, cool. What's your customer experience? All right. Are you doing it? Like if you can check those things, 90 days later, people are like, yo, my business is doing better than it ever has. Yeah. But before they were like, I gotta make this much. Yeah. Okay, like cool. What are you doing? And it's
exactly.
Like, well, no. Like tell me your day. Like how are you operating? That's what you can influence. You can't influence the economy, man. Like
Yeah, exactly. I try to tell people to focus on the process and to ask yourself, do I know more than I did when I started? Am I better than the version of me who first walked into the school? Most people can say yes to that.
Yep.
Are you better than you were a month ago? Or do you know more? Not even necessarily better, but do you know a couple more things that you didn't know a couple months ago? Well, yeah. Okay, well, you're improving. Like, you may not be able to see it because, unfortunately, with jiu-jitsu, it's a very subjective, and there's a lot of people look to visual indicators to see if they're doing better, which is usually the rank on the belt, and that's the benchmark. And they get into comparing themselves to other people, and you have all those pitfalls and things. But you have to be focused on the process, and eventually the outcome will happen when the time is right.
It's a great point which you bring up. Bringing people back to seeing the stuff that they've accomplished.
Yeah.
Because we're all like, you brought up comparisons earlier, and it's the biggest trap, right? It
is.
Comparison's the thief of joy because.
Well, think about, in your industry, it's how you look. Like a lot of that, comparing how you look. I come in and train this much, and I don't look like so-and-so, And what's wrong with me? I'm putting in the work.
And the thing is, like, if that's your mindset, right? Like, there's always going to be somebody fitter. There's always going to have somebody with more money, like somebody prettier. I mean, look, it's reality, right? So you have to love yourself and appreciate the stuff that you've done. There's nothing wrong with pursuit of, the process of pursuing to be better, right? But it's like the Dan Sullivan that calls it the gap, the horizon. Like, what happens when we're such a hedonic, society that like, I can't wait till I make 6 figures, and then you make 6 figures, and you're like, I want to make,
Now what? Yeah, that's that's what defines you as a person.
Exactly.
What if all that goes away?
Yeah, now you have an identity crisis.
Yeah, or like, what if somebody, I want to win a jiu-jitsu world championship, and then they win it, and they're still not fulfilled. And their whole identity is about being a world champion in jiu-jitsu. It's like, okay, well, what more is there after that?
Did you have that?
No, because my goal never was, that's not the reason I do this. That's just a fun test for me to go in and compete and see how well I do and see what I need to work on and all of that. So for me, that's not it didn't really matter other than that it's a nice, I was doing it for other people. Like I felt like I was, carrying a lot of the causes and things that I believe in with me and kind of doing it for that purpose and to shed light on those things. And, of course, for the challenge for myself, but beyond that, like it's a nice resume piece, but really it's not what defines me. What defines me is using what little sphere of influence I have within the jiu-jitsu community to help people. And I think that's my purpose within jiu-jitsu and in doing what I do is being able to help other people and to help people understand how they can take the principles of jiu-jitsu and apply them to different areas of their life to make improvements and have positive impact in their life. So for me, as long as I can do that, that's what defines me, I believe, within the jiu-jitsu world, not how many titles I can win. All that stuff's cool. I'm not going to lie. Like, it feels really good to win a world title.
Winning
in accomplishing goals you set out for yourself. Like this year, I wanted to, I'm like, I want to win back-to-back years, and I was able to accomplish that. That was really cool, but it's not what makes or breaks me.
Yeah, you don't attach yourself. And that's
I don't give myself value based on whether I can or can't accomplish those things.
That's a very, very powerful way of thinking, though, man. I almost think that in itself is a superpower, because you shed the unneeded pressure of expectations, right? Like, because when you understand, there's a great book called Inner Game of Tennis. That was the first one I can't remember the author's name. Inner Game of Work too. But a lot of what he talks about is like, you learn so much faster when you don't have the inner editor constantly like,
right.
You should have grabbed him right there, and you should have pulled the Kimura, should have, right? Like, that doesn't make you the best, right? Like, you fall to the level of your training, but when you're free, you actually do your best work, and you do your best, I would say, whatever sport you're in.
Yeah, and staying present. Being present-minded and not looking at the past. Like, I know in basketball they say to forget the last shot you took. Like, literally focus forward, essentially. Like, whether you made or missed that last shot, you're supposed to just focus on focus forward on the next shot.
Well, the greatest shooters, if you ask them, right? Like, and I know me at my best. You know what's crazy? As you bring this up, if I was completely expectation free and just being myself and playing, man, like, there's games where just like you're unstoppable, right? And then there's games where
call that the flow state.
Yeah. And I've been, I'm very, very fortunate to say, like, I have experienced that, like, actual, I actually, if I'm not mistaken, I still hold the highest scoring record of high school national games, like 67 or something. Like, man, it was insane. But it was one of those, like, where, like, I could kick the ball and it go in,
Right.
But I also know the other side of it, like, you miss 4 or 5 shots, somebody talks smack, you're not in a good headspace, and your confidence falls. And it's like, if you put those two videos side by side, you would be like, who is that guy?
Yeah.
Like, that's but it's the same player with the same skills, and the only thing that's influencing how well they play is in here.
Absolutely.
Right?
And for me, I've lost way more times than I've won, but I've had some big victories that, people tend to remember, but I've lost way more than I've won. But that's not what defines me,
But why? Because and I know we've talked about this,
right.
Because you go into that and you go like, okay, I lost. What are the things that I'm learning from this match?
Yeah.
Like, what
and
can
even
I improve on?
Even when I win, I'm still
learning.
Like, I was beating myself up this year because I didn't have the opportunity to get more finishes. Like, I finished my first opponent, but then I wasn't able to finish the other 3. Like, and part of that is, props to them. They had really good defense, and I felt like if I opened up my game a little much to go for the attacks, like, they would have capitalized on those opportunities, because they're all at that level. They're all world class. So, but even then, I was like, man, I should have done this or should have done that. But then I, refocus and go, okay, we don't have any control over that or influence over that other than what I do from here forward. Next time I'll be able to maybe approach it differently, but I don't have the ability to change that at this point, other than maybe making some adjustments in the training and whatnot, and focus on the things you have the ability to control and influence. But people get stuck they both get stuck in focusing on past failures as well as past accomplishments. I think dwelling on those past accomplishments too can be just as dangerous as focusing on the failures, because if you get a little too big-headed,
it's like
and cocky,
underconfident, overconfident.
Yeah,
right?
it's like being overconfident and being underconfident are both equally as dangerous.
Correct. Yes, absolutely.
You know, and I experienced that. I had a match where I went against a person that I had basically had a training session with in the past. And I was like, based off of the training session, I was like, oh man, I'm gonna smash this person. And I went in way overconfident, and I ended up getting caught. I'm like, oh, okay. I was borderline cocky. Like I was like, oh, there's no way. And took it lightly, right? That's why I tell my students, you have to treat like it could be somebody that you've beat like 10 different times in the past, but if you face them every time, you got to treat it like they're the best in the world.
That's a great point. Like in weight training, I say, treat the lightweight heavy so that the heavyweight can feel light.
Yeah.
Because every rep you're patterning something.
Exactly.
And, most people get injured actually lifting light weights, like lighter weights, warm-up sets and whatever. And it's a great point because the power, I think we even talked about this last time, the power of mindset,
Yeah. And the mindset was what really helped me transcend and go to that level where I did start doing well at the black belt level.
Yeah. And it's because to me, there's skill sets and then there's mindsets, right? Like you can't, if you've never shot a basketball, no matter what your mindset is, like you're not going to do well, but the thing is your mindset will enhance your skill set. And so those three I think are critical, mindsets and skill sets. So, skill set, you can break it down. Like, I don't know, in business, it's like sales and marketing, right? Like leadership. In jiu-jitsu, you could go like, here's all the skills that you need, right? Then there's the mindset part. Then I think the third one is radical self-inquiry, right? Which is basically like the awareness, like, hey, I'm doing dumb stuff, in communication and behavior, and I'm getting too cocky. Check yourself, dude.
Yep.
Or hey, I'm feeling like really unconfident. Like, hey, check yourself, do something about it, right? Like and radical self-inquiry is like, I think, really important when it comes to leadership. Somebody might listen to this and go like, well, I'm not in a leadership position. It's like, well, actually you are.
Yeah.
I don't care where you are, you can be a leadership, you can have leadership behaviors. Yeah. And if you don't have self-inquiry, and like in just this last week, I've experienced this, right? Where I'm standing there in a conversation and I'm watching somebody who's not aware that they're offending somebody else, right? And I'm like just looking like,
no self-awareness.
No self-awareness, so it's before you can. Here's the problem, in coaching, and I know this goes the same for you in the business of, martial arts and jiu-jitsu, is you have to have self-awareness before you can have, you can have to have self-management before you can manage a client.
Yeah.
Right. And there's a lot of people who are like, oh, I'm trying to keep this person accountable. I'm like, dude, you don't even keep yourself accountable. Like, how are you going to manage somebody else when you can't manage yourself? How
Absolutely.
are you going to be aware? Like, how are you bringing up somebody else's faults when you don't see your own?
Yeah.
That's why you have no empathy, right? Because you can't see it. And so the radical self-inquiry is, to me, part of that is this: surrounding yourself with people. Like, if you called me up and said, hey, Luka, man, like, when we were spending time the other day, dude, you did something, I felt like it was disrespectful. I felt like that was inappropriate. And if I love and respect you, it would be like, damn, dude, like, what was it? And I was, it's hard to hear, but I'm like, okay, I gotta make sure I don't do that again. Like, I gotta really work on this thing, right? So surrounding yourself with people that will, one, like, bring it up and challenge you on some stuff and go like, hey man, like, that's not cool. Like, here's what happened.
Yeah.
Here's why this is not okay. And like, here, let's make sure this doesn't happen again, right? Because now, sure, like, you make a mistake, but now you can get better. Now, if you're around people they don't even have that awareness.
Yeah.
Now you're just ingraining these shitty behaviors that become a norm, right? Like, oh, well, I don't know. Like, nobody ever told me that was wrong.
I was telling somebody last night, I gave a little talk in class, and I was talking to some people after class, and I said, that phrase, respect is earned. Mm-hmm. Like, I don't believe that. Like, I don't believe in that approach. I believe in treating people with respect up front, unless somewhere down the road they give me a reason not to respect them.
Right. Yeah.
And I was also saying that it's important to understand when you do have an interaction, and maybe not a positive interaction with somebody, or somebody comes off the wrong way, you have to realize, like, everybody is fighting an unseen battle that we're unaware of. Me being in the position I'm in, I'm aware of a lot of these battles because for some people, I'm the only person they have that they feel comfortable coming to and sharing these things they're dealing with, with me. And so I'm very careful with how I treat and interact with people, and I try to give them the benefit of the doubt. It's like a lot of times later down the road, you find out they were dealing with some really heavy stuff.
Yeah, and
really heavy stuff you never would have imagined, and it's like, oh, now it makes sense. Like why he was struggling, or why he was having this problem, or why he seemed off that day, or was kind of, had a little bit of an attitude. It's not an excuse for the behavior, but it gives you a little more of a level of empathy.
Empathy, yeah. Because think about it, like, think of yourself at your worst, right? Like, I mean, come on, so, anybody that you ask, like, tell me that one time,
right,
where, man, you behaved in a crazy way because something was going on in your life, loss, death, whatever, divorce. I mean, I've been through it all. Like, man, like, I was not myself, you know, and you have an opportunity. Like, this is so crazy, man. But like, there's stuff that's happened that people that have, there's a person that listened to my podcast that was like, man, like, I was about to do something really dumb to myself, and I didn't because I thought of you. Like, I mean, I was tearing up when
thought
this
of
was
what you would have done, right?
Man, it's crazy, and like, so I have this thing that in one of my 6 leadership questions for today is like, where did you elevate instead of escalate?
Right.
And every day you have an opportunity to, like, think about it. Like, somebody does something dumb and you can go like, what if I, lose your mind, right? Like, that's just elevating the situation.
Exactly.
Escalating situation. But if you elevate it, it's like, maybe like somebody's being disrespectful to you, right? And instead of like going, all right, that's it, I'm gonna show them who's boss, right? Going like, hey, I'm curious, like, what makes you say that? Right? With a non-threatening tone.
Exactly.
Right? And it's like, hey, you must be having a rough day. Like, I'm curious, like, why would you bring that up? Why would you say that? I'm trying to seek to understand, right? And I can't tell you, even on social media now, like, people will go like, dude, I saw that person write this. Why didn't you destroy him, right? I'm like, what is it going to do if I destroy them, right?
Exactly.
Like, sometimes I message people, and I'm like, hey, man, just reaching out. Like, I'm just really trying to understand, where you're coming from, and trying to understand why you said that, right? I'm curious, so I can maybe, better explain what I'm doing. And it's crazy. Like, you'll, like, 6, 7 out of 10 times, people will go like, what?
Yeah.
And they'll start talking to you normal, right? Like, 3 out of 10, they'll just be, knuckleheads. Yeah. And it's like, and of course,
those are sorting out the actual trolls from from the people who maybe just weren't able to express what they were trying to say.
Correct.
Or,
And even with the trolls, like, I feel like, that person, man, I don't even get mad anymore. I'm just like, man, they must be going through some rough stuff.
Yeah,
like,
usually it's, they're miserable.
Yeah, and it's like, I don't, I'd rather, like, I'm not getting, like, jolted by somebody going like, you suck, right? My confidence is fine, and so I'd rather, if I can turn something around, I will. If I can't, here's what I won't do. I won't beat them down. You know what I mean? Like, because beating them down is like an ego thing. It's like,
and again, going back to what I said, like,
you don't know.
What are they struggling with?
Exactly, right? And
and
I don't, you've probably heard stories. I mean, shit, like, I read the book Talking to Strangers, a new book from Malcolm Gladwell, which is phenomenal. But it goes into deeper issues in specifically this country, but in general, and how we're not good at communication.
Right.
But also, like, how like this lady got arrested, for not doing anything, and pretty much like killed herself in jail because, like, this whole sequence of events happened because of a lack of understanding and communication, right? Like, now in this case, it was like a police officer, but it wasn't even like it's not about like this, the cops versus us type of thing. It's a communication thing. So there's all examples of how we as humans are just not really good at listening and seeking to understand.
Yeah.
And we just always jump to conclusions, assumptions, and then 2 people are doing it, right? Because it's like one person does it, then the other person does it, and then it's just a battle of like assumptions. And the result is never good, and sometimes catastrophic, to be honest with you, right? So I think about that nowadays, and I'm like, and of course you're somebody says something disrespectful to you, your amygdala pops up, and
Yeah.
the Luka from 10, 15 years ago
Yeah.
is like, man, getting the Uzi out. But like,
Yeah.
but then I'm like, okay, look, I take the time and I go, do I want to elevate or, escalate this, right? Number one, and then I'm going to do everything because it throws people off.
It does.
When you don't like pop off back,
Yeah.
and you're like in a calm way, go like, hey, I'm sorry that you feel that way. Like, please help me understand, like, so I can fix this or make it better. Because
Yeah.
I'm just not aware of, what I did to make you
It's
upset.
verbal jujitsu.
Absolutely, it's
Yeah.
Aikido, right? Because it's
It
like
is.
Aikido is like deflect and,
Yeah,
and,
use
and
the own
look in the
energy.
same direction as they do.
Was
right?
the
Like,
expression in a story? Was it it's like a story about the Dalai Lama or whatever, and the guy's insulting him, and he basically doesn't respond. And he basically tells him like, "I don't accept your insults. They're for you to carry."
yes.
And
yes.
I heard a great thing the other day. It basically said like, just the act of hating someone without physically doing something to them or saying anything, just like hating somebody, is one of the only things that does no damage to the person that the hate is directed at, and only you're carrying it and it damages you.
I would say it damages you the most,
Yeah.
right? Because, I mean, it's the whole analogy of like, it's, it's like resentment, right? Resentment and wanting to, it's like you're holding a hot coal, trying to throw it at somebody, but it's stuck to your hand and burning
Yeah.
you, and like, it's like
Exactly.
you're the one that's suffering.
You're carrying the burden.
I mean, the thing is like, I would say that kind of, forgiveness is more for you than the other person,
Yeah.
and I think it's the same way. Like and I'm far from perfect, but like I've done a lot of work on myself to be able to let these things go, because
Yeah.
now there's a difference between if you bring something up to me and you're like, hey, look, man, I care about you. Here's something there's this thing that you did. This is how it made me feel, or like this is how it made this other person feel. That's somebody being kind of respectful enough to you to tell you that something is out of line with your behavior or values or integrity, right?
Yeah.
Which I think is great, and we need more of that in our life, and we need more of that without me going like, "What are you talking about, James? You don't know me," when you get into that thing. But you go like, "Damn, okay, how tell me more. Like, why do you feel like I did that, right?" Now you're helping me become a better man, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now then there's the other side where it's like, where somebody on the internet or and somebody doesn't even know, like, man, I have examples from like these last 2 weeks that'll blow your mind, right? Like, and I mean, I'd hate to even say this, like, but I mean, right, like I have a bigger social media following now, and more people know you and this, that, the other, and man, like somebody that I used to actually work with, 13 years ago, and to a friend of mine, we're partnering up to do this kind of coaching business in fitness. And he's also pretty influential, like in the industry. And somebody emailed him back, like just talking so much smack about me. And I'm just like, and he forwarded it to me. I'm like, what? Like, this is crazy, right? Like, I mean, where a lot of it is like, I this obviously untrue, but the thing is, it's from their worldview, right?
Yes.
It's from the lens of their how they're seeing the world. And instead, like, I mean, back, like, I would usually get like really angry about stuff like this. Like, man, that's not me,
But it says more about them than it says about you.
Yeah,
ultimately.
And I actually was like, man, like, what are they going through right now to where like this is the thing that's taking their energy up? Like, something, I don't know if it's something that good that is happening for me, which I created essentially, right? Like, is triggering them, right? It's a mirror
Most
of like,
the time it's good things that are happening for you.
Yeah, absolutely.
That triggers that.
That triggers somebody else.
People tend to want you to either be at their level or slightly below, preferably slightly below their level, but then
a little above is still
or
okay.
a little above, in some
but then
instances.
If you get too far away,
you start pulling away, then that's when you people really start exposing their kind of their true nature.
Yeah, and I started doing like, and I have these moments, right, where I'd be like, see somebody online like, man, I know that guy. That guy's bullshitting, and like, look how well he's doing. And then I go like, hold up. Why are you upset? Like, regardless of how they are or whether you like them or not or whatever, right? Like, what does that have to do with them? Like, hey, maybe that's like, maybe you need to promote yourself more. Maybe you need to market more. maybe you need to, like, forget about, like, it's not about them, it's about you. What is the trigger?
Yeah.
There is a trigger there. And so I rather explore the trigger in myself and like point the finger to myself
Yeah.
and learn something from it, then go like continue, because that's a victim like blame mentality, right?
Totally.
Like, and once again, like, even if it's a scenario where, at the end of the day, you could say like, well, I dislike that person and I don't think that, I don't associate with them, right?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. But like, if you continue to ramp on what they're doing, and you got to check yourself. You know what I mean? Like, why is this thing triggering you?
Yeah.
Like, oh, it's your moral compass?
Yeah,
stop
yeah.
it. Get out of here. Your moral compass is like, I want to do right in the world, and that person's doing wrong, and I want to, get out of here.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Do right in the world and go and do good and become, more well-known and more influential and do more good. Like, that's a huge driving force for me these days. Like, why would I want to be more influential, have a bigger audience, have more money? Because I give so much of it back to the community, and like I want to be able to do that 100-fold. Somebody, I was hanging out with Bedros this weekend, and he was on the show with Ed Milet, and he asked him, hey man, like, some people, like, somebody said to me, like, when is enough? When is enough money and this, that, and the other? And he was like, well, he's like, hey, Bedros, depends on how you look at it, man. But like, when is it? He's like, you give back to Shriners Hospital, like you're the second person behind Justin Timberlake in donations,
Right.
Right. When will there be? When is there enough kids with help?
Yeah.
Like, when is there enough people to give back to? When is there enough? And you're like, and he's like, oh man, like,
It's
that's a
never
different
ending,
mindset, right? Because now, like, you can look at it however you want to, but it's like, oh, Luka, man, you keep pushing and wanting to do more and be more, and like, like, is it an ego thing? And it's like, well, like, it used to be, but it's like, what if I'm like, I can't actually do the things that I want to right now in philanthropy because I don't have enough resources and I need to figure it out, and I will, but like, but it's like, that's what I'm thinking about. Like, how can we like change the community more, right? How can we do this more? And it like, hey, listen, like, Richard Branson, who goes to him and goes, Richard Branson, you got billions, you got billions. What are you still doing? But I've met and hung out with Richard Branson on Necker Island, and like, which is one of the greatest experiences in my life because he's such a big hero in an entrepreneur space for me. And like, that guy is the real deal from a standpoint of like, he doesn't care about, like, he's trying to think about how to change the world, like, and fix stuff, like Bill Gates, right?
Right.
He doesn't give a shit about that, man. Like, and so to me, I think about legacy and like, Simon Sinek calls it the infinite game. Like, how do you, what we leave behind, like, we're thinking about that. I don't want to sell Vigor Ground. I want to have it be around forever for my kids to run it or whatever. Like, how do we make this impact in a community that's beyond what I could ever do? Now, will that, is that an ego thing? Maybe, I don't know. Like, will that matter? But here's the thing: the process of me living my life like that makes my life more enjoyable, and it helps way more people out, right? So it's a win-win-win situation. So that's the crazy thing about it. Somebody will go like, oh, like, when is it enough, right? And another person will go like, yeah, when is it enough? We're not doing enough to help all these people. You see what I'm saying? Like, everything in life is such a frame of mind that, you could, I remember when we were rolling and like, when I was getting decently good. Let me not like try to pretend, that I'm like, my jiu-jitsu game is on like, Thanos levels. But, and I was defending the stuff that you were doing, and you said, hey man, you want me to take it to the second gear? And I was like, fuck you, take it to the fifth gear if you want to. I can defend you. And then like, you submitted me like 17 times in like 30 seconds and you nearly killed me. And then I was like, just take it out to the second level, bro. Everything is a frame, right?
It's all like a matter of perspective.
It's all a matter of perspective, and you could look at that any way you want to, but really I'm just like, all right, like, I just asked that guy to go at a speed and a level that I can't even hold. Go back to level 2. Let me get better. But it's like that in every part of life, and the questions that you ask yourself will lead you into a certain destination. And I always, man, make sure you're asking yourself the right questions.
Yeah, make sure you're asking yourself the right questions, and make sure that you're honest with yourself. Taking responsibility for wherever you're at in your life.
My buddy said the greatest form of wisdom is taking your own advice.
Yeah.
You know, and we don't do it. Like, so
Yeah.
if you came to me and said, man, Luka, I'm struggling with, you know, fill in the blank. And I'm like, James, here's what I really, you know, this is what I see, this is what you should do. When the equivalent things happens in my life, I'm fucking not going to do the same thing.
Yeah,
You know,
exactly.
I'll do some dumb stuff elsewhere. But if I just took my own advice, I'd be living such a better life. You know what I mean? Like, and that is the being honest with yourself that you're bringing up, you know?
Exactly.
And I would, you know, I don't know where we're on time.
We are cranking along.
We're cranking along.
But
I keep coming back to this. Like, I keep coming back to this, and this might sound selfish because of, you know, like everybody that asks me about jiu-jitsu, I'm like, oh, go to James's, like, go to Foster's, right? And people go like, well, why? And there's just two answers, right? One answer is they're like, well, like, the jiu-jitsu is great, like, the teaching is awesome, the coaching is, you know. But the second one is, it's the environment. It's the things that you teach, the way you teach them, the principles that you teach and live by, you know. And like, that's why I personally think that that's part of the reason that your kids program has grown so much, you know. And like, a testament, because like all of my friends' kids, you know, like, whether it's my ex-wife, actually, Erin, or Martha, one of my coaches, or like, I mean, I probably know like 5 or 6 kids that train here that I was like, go there, and like they've been here for a long ass time. And like, yo, that is, you know, and like, even when the parents go like, man, I haven't been able to stick with anything, but they stick with that. And it's a testament to the environment, you know, like, and the power of environment is, like, there's a lot of things that take a long time to change, like things like belief systems, you know, and the ecosystem of mindsets that you brought up from your childhood, like nature and nurture. But the fastest way to change anything in your life is to change your environment, right? Like you said, when the goldfish is sick, don't treat the goldfish, change the water, right? Like, and that's changing the environment. Like, hey, listen, you don't like where your life is going? Look at who you're around. Are you what books are you reading? Maybe none. Maybe all you're watching is TV. Like, you know, who are you listening to? That's all environment. What are you eating? What are you putting in your body? You know, like, what are you doing anything physically, right? Yeah. Change your environment.
Those are all things in your control.
All in control. Like, I mean, even at work, right? Like, even if you're like, oh man, I people at work are constantly asking me to eat donuts. I'm like, you know what? Go for a walk. Go to a cafe that's got like a healthy, you know, I don't know, like chicken bowl or salad, whatever the hell, right? And go there and listen to podcasts.
Yeah.
Same 45 minutes, 60 minutes, but like, you just changed your environment.
Exactly.
You know, 90 days later, 6 months later, different life, right? Different life.
Adds up.
And that's why I'm like, hey, if you want to do something, like if you want to change something fast right now, don't try to like white knuckle yourself out of it. Like, in positive environments, positive behaviors are easier. You know, like James Clear talks in Atomic Habits, the fastest way to get rid of a bad habit is to make it harder. So you love ice cream and you eat ice cream every night, take the ice cream out of the house, right? Now, can you still get ice cream? Sure.
Right.
Go to the store.
Takes more effort.
But now you're like, shit, I got to drive to the store 20 minutes, get the ice cream. It's 15 minutes. It's not 50 minutes worth it. And bam, you now don't do that bad habit. You want to do a good habit, right? That's why, I mean, this is an old kind of thing, but right, when you go to sleep, put on your training gear or put it right on the floor, right? So now it's like you get up, you put it on, and you go, right? Like, and like, you made it easier to do. There's this crazy study about a guy that wanted to learn how to play guitar, and he said, okay, in the next 30 days, I'm going to commit to doing 21 days of playing guitar, right? So he put it in his room, right? And he was like, every day when I come home, I'm going to play guitar for 30 minutes, right? In month 1, when he tries to do this, he plays it like 4 or 5 days, right? And it's like, but it's only 45 seconds away for me to go get it, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Then he goes, all right, here's what I'm going to do. He put it right by the couch. Bumps into it every day. Like, every day when he's like sitting down, he's like, oh, look at the guitar. Boom, now he plays it 27 out of 30 days. Yeah. So what did he do? All he did was made the habit easier to do.
Yeah, he changed that, easier access to it.
Exactly. Yeah. So, man, you want to get in shape? Come to Vigor Ground. You want to get great at jiu-jitsu? Come to Foster's Jiu-Jitsu, baby.
I can't think of any better way to close it out.
It was a really long podcast, so to pitch that at there.
It's great. No, I just want to thank you for taking the time to do this today. I know that you're incredibly busy, and just so everybody knows, Luka is somebody that's been incredibly helpful in my life and is somebody I consider a mentor. Definitely check out Vigor. The Vigor Life building is amazing. We got smoothie bar and
we got cryo
everything,
chamber now.
cryo chamber, everything you could ever
Normatec,
think of. Just definitely the best in the entire area. I can't think of anybody better. So thank you so much for being here today.
My pleasure, brother. You already know.
All right, man. We'll have to do it again soon.
Yes, sir.
All right, everybody. Till next time.